Hi, welcome to Atlassian Tech TV. My name's Chris Mountford, and I take you inside Atlassian to show you how we make software. In this episode, we finish our interview with Nick Pellow, Development Manager for Bitbucket Server, previously known as Stash. Nick and I go into detail on the dynamics of team collaboration across time zones and continents. We also finish our second helpings on the topic of dogfooding.
Dogfooding is an interesting one. I was going to just talk about something we're trying to do is harvest more value from our dog food.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's talk about that. So dogfooding provides value.
Mm-hmm.
It gives you feedback from within the team, within the sub-teams, to the people who wrote this feature, that it's not working in this particular scenario that this other team needs to use it for.
Mm-hmm.
And also outside the team, which I guess was also known as cat fooding, right, where the other teams or the rest of the company will be using, or other people who are sort of friendly, and you'll get feedback from them. So how do you see the value of dogfooding and the handoff from automated testing into internal testing towards the sort of shipping it to people?
Yeah.
And it's supposed to work. Maybe it's beta or something.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's super important, I think, that dog fooding and that handoff. And we call it soak time sometimes, where we like to get it onto dog food and we set ourselves a milestone, so a minimum of a week, say, for a feature, depending on how risky the change is,
right,
before we will release it to customers. And we say, let's get it on there for a week and monitor it. And if we get no negative feedback, we get no errors, then we're ready to roll it out to the public.
Right.
But until then, if we can't get a week, then we're not going to release.
Right. And so how often do you release to customers?
So we're releasing at the moment approximately every 5 weeks.
Okay, so that's 5 weeks, and then there's a new version to download.
Yeah, that's right.
And that new version has a different number and has release notes, and there's some sort of attractive new reason to buy, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Or it need not be some huge attractive thing, but it's at least 4 weeks or 5 weeks of work of customer value. Yeah.
So you've got the different tiers of kind of quality, I guess, quality and engineering process, the sort of development in a loop where developers are writing the software. Then outside that, you've got the sorts of integrations within the team and the cross teams and those automated tests that we talked about earlier. The dog fooding we just talked about now. Then there's other levels of deployment, or I guess packaging and quality assurance, quality assistance. We'll be talking about that with some of the QA specialists.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very important parts of the process, actually.
So how's that whole stream work? Obviously, any part of that can indicate a failure, and then that requires some kind of return to the drawing board or some bug fixing.
Yep.
How do you see the role of each of those tiers connecting? So, how would another team follow that same example? How should software teams consider each of these categories and then invest different amounts in each of those categories? I mean, personally, I'm a big fan of automated tests, but we talked about how potentially there are limits to what you want to automate. I mean, you don't necessarily get the same value of automating every single edge case for a full functional test because they take so long to execute.
Yep.
And then dog fooding, it's great, but you don't want to just throw it straight out of the IDE onto people's plates and make them eat it.
Yep. Look, I think suck it and see.
Yeah.
See what works for you. Try and go deep on a feature first, I guess, and really flesh out the edges of it as fast as possible and try and identify the bits that are most unknown, and go hard on those and get that really under the microscope early on,
right,
and QA'd and tested, and just be very open and transparent about what you've done and how you've done it and what you're scared of. Get ideas off other people, so people like your QA team will help, or the architect or manager might help, another senior developer on your team or sitting near you. So talking to lots of people can definitely flesh out more ideas, and I think that really helps, that kind of collaboration. It's the reason we work in teams, after all, and so don't feel alone.
Your team's are cross-discipline too, so there are specialists in different areas.
Yep.
And they're there because you don't want to have, I mean, some companies I've worked at, they've got the design department, and that's where all the designers are, and there's the QA department, that's where all the QA people are. And products tend to be sort of, you know, ultimately pushed around, and it just feels like, well, it certainly contrasts with how we do things in each of the Atlassian teams I've worked in, where the team is cross-discipline, where there are members, not all teams will have enough staff to have a specialist in each of these roles, but certainly the larger ones do. And for the ones who are the smaller teams, they have people who say a designer who's sort of butterfly visits 3 teams, say, and kind of is the designer for that team as well as a couple of others. So you see those roles, those specializations being, I guess, in the team, you know, part of the team, or there's an identity.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely, and that is certainly key.
Yeah?
Yeah, for sure. So that we work together, and that it's all about just pushing out the best possible product, and not about finding fault with, you know, what such and such has done over there, or that other, you know, that other department. That
those
and
terrible people down the hall.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so how do you kind of, I mean, obviously you're mentioning you're encouraging openness and not really blaming. I mean, you talked about blaming earlier, but I think some toxic cultures I've been in are much more focused on blame and arse coverage and the usual stuff than really making a quality product. You mentioned that quite a few times. So are there any, I mean, do you use retrospectives? Are there any processes, parts of the sort of maybe the 5-week process, or the one, or the sort of sprints or iterations, part of the process that enables you to surface some of those problems and attack them before they fester?
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely do retrospectives. It's about every 5 weeks, and we try, and that's a very open forum where everyone gets the same voice.
So it's a meeting, that's a big team meeting.
Yeah, it's very democratic, ideally, where everyone can talk and they have about the same amount of time to discuss what went well and what didn't go so well.
Right.
And then we also have one-on-ones, and so that's more of a private forum, and we can discuss stuff a bit more directly maybe, and surface stuff like that. And then we have a smaller, I guess a weekly team lead meeting where we can also discuss what's going on and where we're at with certain things. Another tool we use, and I really try and champion this, and I see it happening more and more, is just putting stuff up on Confluence. So you have a problem, before you start coding the problem, just surface that and just get your thoughts down onto a wiki, onto a page. And sometimes just that in and of itself can lead you to a few more ideas.
Right.
And then suddenly you can just grab that link and share it with someone else, maybe in a different department or a different team, and they've had the similar problem, and they may be able to have some help there.
The idea of a wiki is that everyone can see maximally. You know, there are reasons to keep things private, and when those reasons exist, then you can make them private. But in general, you want to see everyone to see each other's work and to be able to add value or comment or collaborate, and to say, well, actually, I had that problem, or maybe you don't mean this, and I'm going to help you. Oh, I'm going to correct that broken link or something, and allow people to not only see but also to edit, and rather than to put those barriers in and prevent that kind of natural collaboration.
Yeah, don't hold your cards close to your chest, really. Just get it laid out there, and don't, and then lay out the pros and cons of each option that you've kind of already thought about, and you'll be surprised at generally how that just helps.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So while we're on the topic of tools, obviously we use our own software tools, and many of them exist because we found a need for them, and so built them ourselves, but we'll use whatever tool is good. So what else do you see as being crucial for the Stash team? You're all co-located, right? You're sitting together.
Yep.
So you don't have the remote team problem, or do you?
We actually do. We have two. So firstly, we have 2 developers in Europe. Right. Quite senior developers, and so they're definitely on the other side of the world.
Yeah, that's a challenging
We
time
have
zone,
marketing in San Francisco.
Right.
and we have support all over the world that we need to talk to. So in a sense, our engineering team is primarily focused, fortunately, in one location in Sydney. And also more and more, we're working closer with the Bitbucket team.
Right.
So,
and they're in San Francisco.
And they're in San Francisco, yeah. So, yes.
So those 3 time zones, Sydney, San Francisco, and was that Central European time? Yeah, that's pretty challenging, because I don't think there's any time you can find where all 3 people in those time zones are awake.
There is no good time, that's correct. So
we find with Amsterdam, they're waking up just as we're leaving work, or they're at work just as we're leaving work. So it makes it hard to have meetings and.
Yep, definitely. So look, in terms of tooling, chatting is definitely like the persistent chat rooms. Whatever your poison is a game changer, and it's one of those things. We had that tool back in Senqua. We wrote a similar exactly, which was just a Jabber-based persistent chat room. It didn't have all the bells and whistles of HipChat, but it had the same fundamental idea, which not many other chat tools really grokked, such as IRC or Skype still hasn't. All the other messenger type flavour of apps haven't really done the persistent chat room, where you can jump into a chat room, quit your client, and you are still abstractly in that chat room.
Right. And when you come back, you can see what happened.
Exactly. You will not miss a message.
Yeah. So IRC obviously doesn't have that, as far as I know. You'd have to have some sort of background client thing connecting, because it's.
Who wants to do that?
No, a bot.
Yeah,
that's boring. But so obviously that's a communication channel, and you mentioned Confluence as a wiki, and having, obviously you've got email and you've got Jira now that you've come into Atlassian, you've got your Jira. So there's issues, and there's of course the pull requests in Stash. There's the code itself. There are a lot of communication channels, and some are good at some things, and others are better at, say, information rather than communication, and so messages rather than sort of documents or whatever. And how do you sort of divide that? I mean, obviously you can sort of mix and match a bit, but what do you think's the good mix of that stuff? If you email someone and they don't respond, that's kind of bad karma, right? If you send someone a HipChat message, and then they're not there, you don't get, I'm on vacation from HipChat. So sometimes you may not even know whether they've seen it.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Most people are really good. They will respond. And
that's the only kind we
hire. If it's consistently, you're not getting a reply, then there is a problem. And you know what? HipChat video them out of the blue.
Okay, so no problem there. But I mean, obviously you're using different tools for different purposes. You've got a tool kit, which composes of multiple ways of doing
things. There's even email, and there's mentions.
Even email.
Mentions, yes, exactly.
Mentions, stuff like that.
Yeah, but that's all very, I think getting face-to-face is fantastic, and even video conferencing. So we're fortunate enough here to have the pretty good video conferencing now. Where it's pretty easy to grab a room with a VC in it and have a really hi-fi video chat with someone on the other side of the world.
Right.
Which often, I find that refreshing after hours of trying to chat and get a message across in typing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you just one more thing. Since you're a dev manager of Stash, how do you do branching and merging, and what's the sort of branch geometry or the sort of way that you manage that? You've got multiple concurrent streams where each of those streams of work has maybe a team lead or a team on it. And so you're going to have, do you have feature branches? Do you do Git flow? What's the...
No, we're using feature branching. And that mostly starts in Jira, as far as I know. That's how I work when I'm working on bugs.
Fixing or creating?
Good question. Often they're the same thing. What are we doing? So yeah, so starting from within Jira now is an awesome experience, and it really just takes away a lot of the guesswork, and you have some consistent branching conventions then which evolve or which are just there for you.
I think it seems like it's personal preference, and also sometimes what work you're in the middle of. If you're already in Jira and you're like, oh yeah, I need to create this feature, and I'm thinking in terms of we need to build this, or we need to fix this bug, and I need to write down what that means, and then connect someone to say, oh yeah, you'll need to be aware of this, and I'm going to do some work on it right now. So, well, I'm here. I might as well create the branch and let's get started. Or if you are working on something, you realize that, oh, this is a feature. I better branch this out now, and or it's a bug or whatever, and haven't written it up in Jira. But you do want to, because you want to communicate with other people about it, and maybe it has enough steps that it deserves to be tracked, and you want a line item on the release notes for the people who are receiving that.
But you might be on an aeroplane, right? You might be totally offline, but you still want to create that branch, absolutely.
Yeah. And so you need to be able to do things in multiple ways.
Yeah. You just want to move fast. Like, you will move a lot faster, sure, when you're just creating branches on the command line, and you're not worried so much about the tracking of it formally, because it's already tracked in source code. So totally pick and choose.
Cool.
What suits you.
Okay, so thanks very much for talking to me today. I appreciate your time. And how can people get in contact with you? Are you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter. You can definitely tweet me.
All right. What's your Twitter handle?
My Twitter handle is Nick.
With 2 I's.
When I signed up for Twitter, Nick was already taken, unfortunately.
Amazingly.
Yes. So I did the original thing and put a X-I.
N-I-I-C-K.
N-I-I-C-K, yep.
Gotcha, we'll put that on the screen.
Okay. The screen. Okay, awesome. Okay.
Okay, well thanks a lot, Nick. I'll be seeing you around.
Very welcome. Lovely chatting to you, Chris. Thank you. Oh, dude.